Thanks for joining us here at Rose Quartz Mediumship podcast, where we simply adore anything and everything healing and metaphysically based. Today we have Jennifer Whitaker from Jennifer Whitaker Coaching joining us to chat about the feminine path to abundance. And we are so excited to have you here on the podcast with us today, talking about the juicy deliciousness of the feminine path to abundance. I think it's a topic that we in our culture need to be talking more about today. So thank you for joining us on the podcast today, Jennifer.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you for the opportunity. I couldn't agree with you more. We are definitely in a time. I think that there's like a paradigm shift that's happening right now where we are moving out of this efforting to create wealth and financial success and abundance. And now women are waking up and saying, wait, there's got to be a better way. And so I can't wait to dive into what that better way looks like during our time together.
Yes, it's such an important topic. And I think you're absolutely spot on in the fact that we are going through a paradigm shift right now.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of women and men who are waking up and saying, this is not the way that I want to be engaging with the world or moving through the world.
I so agree. Yeah, absolutely.
So let's take a second and just tell us a little bit, Jennifer, about your story, who you are, a little bit about your coaching business, your fabulous podcast, Rooted Women Rise. What a delicious name for a podcast. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you landed at this spot in your life.
Yeah, I love that question. And there was not like this one straight linear path. I would have never expected to be a feminine business coach. But I feel like the launch of this journey really started almost 20 years ago when I was at a really low point in my life. And I had this spiritual awakening where I consider myself broke and broken, and had this spiritual awakening that told me worthy and wealthy was who I was. And so I went through this identity shift, this kind of reclamation that really catapulted me from that broken identity into being one of the youngest philanthropy executives in my field. I went on to work with Jane Goodall. I worked for some of the largest environmental and animal welfare organizations around the world, worked with the world's wealthiest individuals, had this beautiful job and mission that allowed me to have all these really unique insights about wealth and money because I was working with people who were very soul-centered. They were using their wealth in very positive ways for the world. And so learning about that and then scaling these organizations to over $30 million, I was learning a lot about business as well. And while I was like so grateful for this experience, after 20 years of doing that and raising money and then, raising a few million in an hour, and then the board comes back and says, we want you to raise more money like by the end of today. And I'm like, it just never felt like enough. It felt like a chase. And I feel like that is the culture that we're in. We're always chasing more and more and more. And it never never feels like enough. And so I came to this point of, I really feel like I have this executive side of myself and this spiritual side of myself. I need something that feels more aligned with the whole of who I am. And so I went on to study the divine feminine for 3 years and got my certification as a spiritual director and a life coach, and decided to then go into helping women around self-worth, because that was like my low point that helped me create this lucrative career. And right outside of the gate, I had, again, a very lucrative business. I was having 6-figure months and everything looked really great on paper. And my hustle tendencies were bleeding right back into my business. So all of the rituals, all the practices that I had, all the strategies that I had to magnetize, I knew how to do that. I knew how to build a business. I just didn't know how to do it sustainably. I thought sprinkling some feminine rituals on top of a strategy would be enough, but I needed actually a framework. I needed something to hold me so that it could be embodied sustainability, embodied divine feminine and feminine abundance. And so I went on to look for some type of mentor that could help me do this. And I couldn't find anything. And I found myself in the midst of this quest doing an equine therapy session. And I was nose to nose in deep meditation with a horse. And it was fall. And so everything literally and figuratively are dying away. It's the fall season, and I felt like my business was falling away. And I had this intuitive knowing that aligning my business with the seasons was the next step. When I was nose to nose with that horse, I heard the horse say to me, I am you, you are me. And it was like this mirror of nature. And I was just like, this is the answer. And so I began to experiment with the seasons in January. Instead of going out of the gate and launching a new program or setting these big, audacious goals, I went inward and I connected with myself and I downloaded my ideas. And from that, that was the launching pad to then create in the spring. And as I started to apply the energy of the seasons and working with my own feminine energy, I was shocked. Like my income actually tripled working less at the time, like half of the time. And I was like, oh, this was the missing piece. This is working with the wheel of the year, this ancient framework that women used to live by millennia ago, and pulling that into modern business so that women can thrive and working with their feminine energy instead of against it. And that now is the core and the framework of my business.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm nodding away because I couldn't agree more. I love the piece where you talked in the very beginning about it being nonlinear. And I
Mhm.
think that that is such an important aspect to talk about because the linear way of moving through the world is pretty non-realistic for the majority of us. It's not our lived experience in the healing realm, in the spiritual opening and awakening realm, in business. It's
Right.
non-linear. And the fact that there's this kind of push in our culture for things to be linear works against the actual nature of us as beings. And
Mhm.
nature is such an intensely beautiful mentor for us when we allow it, right? And
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yes.
just even your piece about the fall and how there's a natural letting go and releasing that happens, right? And that leads us into a place of deep introspection if we choose to follow it. And what
Absolutely.
comes with that deep introspection is spring, right? It's like the energy of the east when you look at, the medicine wheel and that new beginning energy, that rapid growth that you spoke about so beautifully, right? It was like going in during the winter months gave you the ability to move forward and bloom and have this exponential growth that wouldn't have been
Yeah.
possible if you hadn't taken the time to come in.
Yes, so well said. And I think too, when we really think about more the patriarchal society that we live in that is very linear, when we think about that trying to get from point A to B, it's really driven by this energy of scarcity and lack that we don't trust that there are these natural flows that in the darkness, in the winter, that spring will come. And so we take it upon ourselves to push and force and act because we don't trust that the next season will come. But when we lean into the trust, into the mystery, into the darkness, which is a part of the feminine, then we can operate from this more harmonious, balanced place that takes less energy and less effort. And ironically creates more abundance.
Yes. And that's the piece that can be so, so difficult for us, whether we own our own business or
Hmm.
whether we are just moving through the human experience. And I realize I use the word just, and there is no just for moving through the human experience. It's beautiful, right? But I don't think I have ever gone to sleep at night and thought, I wonder if the sun will come up tomorrow. It
Mm.
just doesn't happen.
Mm.
Just like I've never gone into winter and thought, will spring come?
Right.
I just trust there is a deep knowing inside of me that the sun will rise tomorrow morning and
Mhm.
that spring will come and that will turn into summer, which will turn into fall, which will turn into winter.
Yes.
And it's that you don't even have to question it.
Hmm.
And yet, it's so hard to see the mirror in that for business.
Absolutely. And trust, I think, is one of the core challenges I see, at least in female entrepreneurs, is there's this relearning that has to happen in terms of trust. We've been taught not to trust our intuition, not to trust our soul, not to trust the dark. And I have this program in January called Reconnect, and it's where women come. We reconnect with the deepest parts of ourselves in January because we're really tapping into that energy. And one of the practices that I had them do was to really reflect on the dark. What has come from the dark? And when we think about the Celtic Wheel of the Year, which is this ancient framework that I mentioned, one of the mantras that they have that I love so much, they said, everything is birthed from the dark. Everything comes from the dark. So I asked the women in this program, what has come from the dark? And they were shocked that they found that every good thing that they have ever experienced has all come from the dark. And when we start to really pause and we think about that, I think that is the starting point for us to begin to trust again. Nature is our teacher. She is our business guide, our business mentor. The wheel is our business plan. When we use this, I think rather than using the more masculine framework of trying to change our mindset through affirmations. And again, that is a very pushy, forcey way of trying to change the way we think. When we can tap into our feminine alignment and our energetic alignment with nature, automatically, I think there's those remembrances that are awakened within us. It's like, oh no, all the good has come from the dark. No, it is safe to trust my intuition. I have evidence of a lifetime of that. And so all of that comes from alignment versus these, again, force through mindset shifts through those things. I find it being so much more simple and easier.
Yes, yes, yes. Could not agree more. Yeah, it's such a beautiful thing when we learn to work with the flow rather than
Mhm.
against it. Right?
Yes,
I mean, it's so hard to walk upstream. And if you can
absolutely.
just learn how to turn around and let go and surrender and trust and allow the flow of the water to naturally bring you downstream, there's so
Mhm.
much beauty in that.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And I find that it feels, if you're standing at the starting point of this and listening to this and saying like, okay, well, where do I start? Because I really don't trust myself. I really am afraid of the dark. Like when I have an ebb in my business or an ebb in my life, it feels really scary. So where do I start? How can I start to trust and lean into that? And even just a few minutes in nature, taking these sacred pauses and looking to nature to be that mirror is a starting point. And also, I say, look for evidence in your life that speaks to the contrary, that actually speaks to the truth that all good things come from the dark, that it is safe to trust your intuition, that when you had the ebb, a flow eventually came. Just keep looking for that evidence to retrain your truth and your memory.
Yeah, it's so true. Our mind and our nervous system point out what we tell it is important, right? And it reinforces the stories that we are telling in our mind. And
Right.
so if the story that we're telling is that we can't trust ourselves, we can't trust nature, we can't trust our intuition, then we will find a bunch of evidence that supports that.
Mhm.
And when we start to challenge those thought patterns, which are literally just a thought, right? It's just a thought.
Yes.
And we start to look for the evidence that's in opposition to that, right? That's more
Mhm.
aligned with the truth of nature, the truth of us as women, as humans moving through this human experience. There's more evidence that supports that. And so it's really about having the opportunity and that sacred pause that you're talking about to actually look at the evidence and
Mhm.
say, is there evidence that supports this trust, that supports this intuition and me following my intuition and flow that comes
Mhm.
after the ebb? Yeah.
Yes. 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 And I love coupling spiritual practices in nature because we even see through science when we spend even 5 to 10 minutes in nature, there are so many benefits. It awakens the energy within our hearts to even be more confident, to be more radiant, to be more magnetic. We also tap into these theta states within us where subconsciously we are open to more creativity and intuitive guidance. Even talking about our own ancient memories and connection to the women who used to live by the wheel of the year, we are connected to them through our feminine codes and in our DNA. And epigenetics shows us that when we are in nature, those codes are actually activated. And so we remember and we reconnect to that ancient wisdom that's lying just beneath the surface. And so it allows us to embody those truths, I think, even at a quicker rate. I had a woman who, in the same course of the Reconnect course, she had a creative block right around the same time as this course. And she went out and I guided her to do a simple practice sitting by a river. And she had an immediate download within 5 minutes, came back with a creative idea. We mapped it out strategically, and within a week, her course was filled up. Now, that is the feminine flow of abundance. I mean, that is working right there with the energy of water and her intuition and her creativity, and then, mapping it into a strategy. But it came from this like flow, simple, easeful place.
Yeah. Yes. It's so delicious and it's so true. So, what would you say to a listener who says, but I go in nature all the time? I take a walk in the woods, or I go out in my backyard, or I go to the park, and I'm not having these epiphanies.
Mhm.
How would you respond to someone who might have that as a struggle?
Yeah, and that's a very valid struggle because I think it is more than just going out in nature. While there are going to be some benefits to your health by doing that, there are specific pieces that have to be present in a spiritual practice. And that's why I think, I've uncovered this through a lot of experimentation, but it's what I teach inside my programs is that within the first 5 to 10 minutes, you really need to be uninterrupted and really dropping into that theta state. And so that can be done through journaling out in nature in a very quiet setting. It can be done through breath work, where you're breathing in your belly, in your heart, out your mouth. And you do that for 5 minutes, and that drops you into a deeper state. And then begin to ask intuitive questions from those places. So I offer lots of different journaling prompts, and I can even offer, I have a free ritual guide that shares some of these journaling prompts that we can include in the show notes too. Of then when you're in that place of that theta state, that flow, then asking specific questions for guidance and allowing that to come. And don't be attached to how those answers come. They may not come in that moment. They may not come in the way that you think. They may come in a song that you hear 3 times over the next week. It may come in a sensed feeling. It may come in an opportunity that just falls out of the sky, so to speak. There are so many different ways. So just detach from the way that it does show up. So again, just really being in an uninterrupted, unplugged time, 5 to 10 minutes, dropping into that theta state, asking those intuitive questions that you need clarity on, need guidance on, and then being open to receiving that in a myriad of different ways. That would be the way that I would suggest starting.
Yeah, yes. It's amazing how many people spend time in nature, but they've got their phone, or
Right.
they're listening to a podcast,
Yes.
or maybe they're walking with their beloved dog, but then
Hmm.
their attention is on the dog rather than on
Exactly.
themselves. And so that ability to be present, right?
Yeah.
And to really create the sacred space to hear the divine or um the universe or God, for me, those are all the same thing.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but to be able to hear,
Hmm.
right? And sometimes you're right, it comes in the form of the wind, and there's a
Yes.
message in the wind. Sometimes it's a song, sometimes it's a dream that night. Sometimes, we became a frequency or a vibrational match through going into nature for this thing to drop out of the sky, this opportunity or this knowing. And we don't always connect it back
Right.
to the
Yes.
experience that we had, the ritual that we did, the ceremony that we performed. And so really having our awareness there and maybe a bit of curiosity, right? Like,
Mhm.
ooh, where will this show up? Right? Like I took
Exactly.
myself in nature. I'm not attached to the way that I'm going to receive, right? That's for the universe or God or nature or the divine to figure out. My
Mhm.
job is to notice it when it shows up, right? And so bringing that little bit of curiosity to just look for it and look for the
Yes.
possibility.
I love that you weaved in curiosity and expectancy because expectancy is a part of this as well. So when you ask the question, know that it will get answered. And so there you can have some levity and some joy and some excitement and fun with it of like, I know it's going to be answered. I don't know how it's going to be answered, but I know that my question will be answered. I know I will be guided. So yes, I love that you pointed that out for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think some people struggle with that possibility or the expectation. It's almost like they don't want to get disappointed.
Mm,
And so there's maybe an expectation that it might not work,
yes, I've
right?
been
And
there.
same, same. I have been there as well. And so, what would you say to someone who is like, yes, for other people that works, but for me, I don't always get the answer?
Yes, I believe we all have gotten the answer very similar to what you said. It may not have been in the way that you expected or the answer that you wanted.
Mm,
But I believe that we always are. And I feel like there was a season of my life where I say I had guardrails on my dreams because I was so afraid of dreaming bigger because they didn't happen. And what I learned to do was to reframe, not that they didn't happen, but they hadn't happened yet,
mhm,
right? So there's the yet. We tend to, again, from a very linear place, we have these arbitrary timelines that we're trying to get to. And I think that creates more resistance in ourselves and disappointment in ourselves if we take the timeline off, which is really driven by scarcity and lack of like, I have to get to it by this time so that X will happen. And if it doesn't, like there are all of these rules that we put on this. When we step back from the timeline and we look at the vastness of our existence, we can pull back and be like, I have all the time in the world to manifest this. And ironically, when we pull back from the timeline, it ends up happening quicker. But I find that when we're too attached to this arbitrary timeline, that's when we're like, oh, it didn't happen. No, it might still be in process. It likely still is in process. You just have to believe that it hasn't happened yet. It is coming. So I like this practice of saying instead of waiting for it to come, we're watching for it to come. I have a what I call an abundance journal, and I every day at the end of every day, I take notes of evidence, that it is unfolding. I'm watching for signs and clues that it's happening. The full picture may not have manifested yet, but there are pieces of it that I'm seeing every day line up. And I think that's a really good starting point too.
Yeah, I love, 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 love that technique. Because when we are bringing conscious awareness to where we're already a frequency and vibrational match for these dreams, it just helps us to become in alignment with it, right?
Yes.
Sometimes that piece that you were talking about of an expectation around the timing, and when we can let go of it, that's when the magic happens, right? It's in
Mhm.
that releasing, it's in the trust, it's in the surrender where we can just allow, right?
Mhm.
And when we're so caught on these arbitrary timelines that we've created in our mind as a human, right, from a
Mhm.
very egoic place, it can leave us in a place of doing rather than being, right? And again, that shift into what is so common in our culture of divine masculine
Mhm.
versus the being and um, allowing that is
Yes.
so divine
Yes.
feminine.
We definitely need both, but we are imbalanced. I don't know if you're familiar with the metaphor of the bird of humanity. Have you heard of that?
Yes, yes. Tell our speakers about it. It's
Okay. So, in some indigenous traditions, they have shared this metaphor that currently we're experiencing the bird of humanity. And this bird embodies who we all are as a human species. And currently, this bird has one wing extended really long, and it is that wing is strong and overextended due to its overuse. And that side represents the masculine. The other side of the bird, on this other wing, the wing is pulled close to the body and is truncated and atrophied due to its underuse. And that side represents the feminine. And this bird, because it's using one overextended wing and not using the other, is flying in circles and is unable to get to its destination. And until we learn how to balance both wings, extending the feminine wing and strengthening that so that the masculine side can rest and be balanced and not be overused. Until that happens, we'll be continuing to fly in circles and we will never reach our destination. So if you feel like you are flying in circles, which I know many of us do, I have definitely been there. This is a sign to examine your energy. Where are you overusing one side and underusing the other? And how can you bring yourself into harmony?
yeah, yeah. It's such a beautiful visual. And for so many people, when they can connect with a visual,
Mhm.
they are able to really understand on a deeper level, on an embodied level, what it feels like to be spinning in a circle, right? Like I am flying like crazy. I am working so hard and I am looping and I am looping again. I think I've seen this before, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
if there's a listener who's saying, yes, yes, I have, my divine masculine, I have my right wing out, and my left wing is atrophied and up against my heart, how would I begin to learn to extend that left wing to create balance in my life?
Yes, I really think it goes back to that tipping point for myself of feeling very burned out for the second time, and then leaning into the wheel of the year as that framework. When we reflect on the wheel of the year, and for those of you who aren't familiar with this is a framework that is rooted in Celtic tradition and some pagan traditions, some other nature-based traditions, where societies followed the seasons to know when to rest, when to produce, when to harvest, when to celebrate. And they use this to guide their lives, their prosperity, their businesses, and their well-being. and thrived for a long time using this as the framework until it was more of the Roman Empire coming in and changing this into more of a Gregorian calendar that we now follow, which is very linear. But originally it was cyclical. So if you look at a circle and you divide it into 8, I call pie slices, each turn, each pie slice represents a different seasonal energy. The ones you might be familiar with are winter solstice, spring equinox, summer solstice, the fall equinox, and then there are subdivisions in between each that celebrate the midway points of each of those seasonal shifts. And each one, again, has its own energy. When I think about abundance in business, the winter months for abundance, I say is more when we think about the divine feminine, it's about going inward and remembering who you are. It's connecting with the deepest parts of yourself. If you have a business, this might be the time that you're reflecting on what worked and what didn't work from last season. You're giving yourself that spaciousness to really tap into your authenticity and allowing that space for the creative ideas to come and drop in during this spaciousness and rest period. I had an incredible download when I was in this season, which allowed me to discover actually the origins of wealth. And we have learned for many of us that wealth is a very masculine thing, but I actually discovered during my winter season that the original holders of money and the original bank was to the goddess Juno Moneta, and priestesses held and managed the money. So the origins of wealth came from a very divine feminine place. And when I discovered this, it was like a coming home to myself, a remembrance. It was like this was a starting point for me to move into the other seasons as I started to move into my business and abundance. But I held that remembrance of like, I now remember who I am and moved forward from that place. The next turn, we think of spring. And that comes with that creative energy. Right now, we're experiencing that. It's like this excitement of kind of getting out into the world after being inward. And I call this time that reclamation energy. This is like when we're really reclaiming maybe our intuition, we're reclaiming our trust in ourselves, we're reclaiming our creativity, we're really reclaiming these feminine gifts that we have. And in the business world, this is when you're probably starting to create your new offers and your programs and really start to birth the ideas into the world that you downloaded in the winter. And in the summertime, this is that time for embodiment. This is like that time that you get visible in your business, you're selling, you're really like getting out in front of people. And from an abundance and a divine feminine, you are now embodying the whole of who you are and really allowing this magnetic version of you to call in the abundance and the prosperity and the lifestyle and all the things that you envision in the winter season. And then the fall, this is the time for manifesting and harvesting and refining. So in the business, you are refining what you've been doing throughout the year and bringing things to a close for the winter. And you're also harvesting all of the beautiful abundance that you have received from implementing all of these different energetic categories throughout the year. And then we find ourselves going back into winter again. And so it's this continual cycle. And it is all about, I'd say, this framework really is about holding you consistently through embodiment. And so I find that it works so well because you're paying attention to the clues and the cues through the season, and this holds you throughout the whole year versus doing one practice and then returning back to your life and being on autopilot. When you're living the wheel, it becomes an embodied practice every single day. And I find is a very sustainable way to create both an abundant business or an abundant life.
Yes, 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 yes. I so I use the phrase the medicine wheel, which is very similar to the wheel of life or the wheel of the year, right? It gets called lots of different things. And I can remember early in my trainings when I was going through Druid training, when I was going through shamanic apprenticeship, understanding just how powerful the medicine wheel was or the wheel of the year was, and then actually noticing myself backpedaling away from that depth of knowledge, right? That ancient wisdom that carried so much medicine. And I cognitively, cerebrally had learned about it, but the shift from a cognitive place to an embodied place actually took me a bit of time. It was like
Mhm.
I had access to this wisdom and would find myself leaning away from it because I could recognize the level of empowerment and power that came from working in this state of flow, and that piece of like pulling back, and not feeling quite ready
Mhm.
was such an interesting process for me. And it actually took me a couple of years to learn how to truly and deeply work with the medicine wheel. But man, when you get it, it is life
Yeah.
changing. It is life changing.
Yes, it is. And I'm so grateful that you shared that challenge because it is a challenge. We have to reset our nervous systems,
Yeah.
right? Like there is like I said, like a reclaiming and a new embodiment. There's a shift in identity that has to happen. And that is scary. And that's why I think the wheel is so interesting, is because it's not just one and done. You're not just trying to get to a goal and then all of a sudden you're embodied. Like there are layers and we spiral deeper and deeper. So there's a remembrance, a reclaiming, an embodiment, the manifesting, and then there's a deeper remembrance. And then we go deeper, especially if there is some resistance to fully embodying this. It's like, okay, what can I remember? What can I reclaim right now? What can I embody right now? And allow that to be okay. And then work through that again. And then go a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper and reclaim a little bit more and embody a little bit more. It's not like a perfectionistic, type of framework. It is a deepening and a becoming and deepening takes time and it's layered. And so that's why, again, I think that this framework is just so powerful, is because you can continue to drop deeper and just keep going with it and keep working with it year after year after year.
Yes, 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 yes. It's like layers to an onion, right?
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
peeling off layer upon layer and
Mhm.
coming uh deeper in contact with our authenticity and our uniqueness and um our birthright.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. It is our birthright. Wealth is who we are. I have my methodology is called Wealthy Like a Woman. And it's not because it is centered in money, but the core of the word wealth is well, whole, and significantly valuable. And that is who we are as women and as men. I mean, that is who we are. And when we can reclaim that, remember that, embody that, the manifestation will come.
Yes. Yes. So, what if a listener is listening to this and saying, "Yes, I'm all in. This sounds so great. Do I have to wait until next January?"
That's a great question. No, I think too, the wheel can be used literally in terms of through the seasons, and the lunar cycles also represent the wheel as well. So when you think about the full moon into the new moon, it is a very similar mirrored cycle as well. So you can work with this on a monthly basis as well. I would just say, just start getting curious. Create your own wheel. If you want to start in the spring, start paying attention to what your energy is saying to you, what your body is saying to you. I've had some people who lived in Ecuador who said, can I use the wheel of the year? Like, I don't have defined seasons. Absolutely. There are subtle shifts in nature, regardless of where you live. Start paying attention to that. Start documenting that. Do the same thing with how that impacts your energetic levels, and do the same with the moon. And you can just start to experiment and play with that and divine and designing your strategy or your manifestation techniques around your energetic levels. So that's where I would say you could start.
Yes, such beautiful advice, such beautiful advice. And when you really learn to work with the flow of the seasons, right, the cycle of the seasons inside of the medicine wheel or the wheel of the year, as well as the lunar cycle and then our
Mhm.
menstrual cycles, right? And you find all of these layers of flow that can happen and how you will ebb and flow even within those layers. And it's true magic. It's true magic. I can say for myself, even if I'm not in one of those bigger wheels, right? Like looking at the wheel of the year, for example, maybe I'm just looking at the wheel of the week, right?
Yes.
And so like on the weekend when I have more rest, when when I have the space and the capacity to just be, I'm amazed at how that winter time, right, is on the weekend. And
Mhm.
I've had times where I've said to my husband, I am doing nothing. I'm doing absolutely nothing today. I'm just going to be. And within an hour, I'm jumping up and I'm like, I have all this stuff that just came in from this hour or 2 hours of just being, right? And then I'm like, oh, and now we're in spring, right? And so just even within a day, even within a week, we can find these wheels. And when you understand how the flow of the wheel works, you can then work with it even in a daily basis or a weekly basis, a monthly basis.
Absolutely. And it's all about listening and feeling into the cues. I find now that I'm so in tune and aligned with this, I can feel when I've been on my computer too long, and all of a sudden there's something in my body that's like, okay, you have the choice right here. You can push through, which is what society would tell me to do. Push through, finish this email, finish this project, even though it might take another hour or two. Or you can shut the laptop, take a step away, and either come back or start again tomorrow. But I find that now that I'm paying attention to those clues, which is my own kind of miniature wheel in the day, I flow a lot better. And when I try to push through a creative block, it'll take me maybe 3 hours later. And I'm like, I still haven't finished writing this post that I wanted to write. Versus I step away for an hour and I go on a nature walk, and all of a sudden, all the words come to me. I come back, I write it in 5 minutes. And so there, I've just conserved my own time, my own well being. And the result is probably even more beautiful because it came from my spirit versus this push from my mind or my body as well. So, yeah, paying attention to clues has been a game changer for me.
Yes, 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 yes. And I love the piece that you're pulling out there of it's one thing to notice, right? And to
Mhm.
witness this inside of ourselves. It's another thing to honor it. Right?
Yes.
It's like we can be sitting in front of a computer realizing, like, okay, I'm disassociated, I'm tapped out. This is coming from a very mind-based place at this point in
Mhm.
time versus through my spirit and my soul and my being. Um, and I get the choice, right? Am
Mhm.
I going to honor what is here to be felt? Or
Yes.
am I going to do the thing that I quote unquote should do culturally and just push through? And
Right.
I think that there's a lot of power in pushing through and realizing that it really wasn't very effective, right? That maybe
Mhm.
the post or the email didn't feel the way that we wanted it to because we were in a place of pushing
Right.
versus a place of attracting and being. And when we
Mhm.
just take the time to go walk in nature or to meditate or to
Yes.
do yoga or to dance or to cook, right? And then we come back and it's a totally different frequency.
Absolutely. I have had myself included and my clients so many miraculous um, outcomes from going on a nature walk or stepping away and coming back and saying, oh my gosh, somebody, I don't know where they came from. They're a new client. They just reached out to me and I just stepped away. I had a woman who came to me and she had been following a coach's guidance. It was very well intended, but it was a very rigid framework of like she had to follow all of these steps. And she came to me and she said, I don't know why it's not working. I've been pushing myself. I've been following everything and I am burned out and I'm fried. And I've been following him to a T. I was like, well, what does your intuition say? She's like, oh my, and she's a very intuitive person. I haven't created any space to listen to my intuition. I don't know. I was like, so we carved out some time for her to do that. And it was one day later, she had all of these creative downloads. She let go of that business coach. She implemented the two things that came to her mind that felt really fun. And she ended up hitting her six-figure goal within like 3 months from then. And it was just like, it's the spaciousness. It's that space for us to have that flow. And that is where we are magnetic.
Yes, yes. I run a workshop called Discovering Infinite Possibilities. And the first 3 weeks are about magnetic alignment. Because
Mhm.
we are magnetic when
Yeah.
we remember who we are and we
Yes.
follow our authenticity, right? It's like no one can hand you a prescription that says, do these steps, right? And that's not to say that strategy isn't important in business and in life, but no one can hand it to you.
Right.
No one can
Right.
hand it to you. And what a beautiful space that you provided the opportunity for this woman to step into, of her saying, "Oh, my intuition." And just having a day, right? And I talked about this like on my weekends. Sometimes I will say, I am doing nothing, right? I'm just
Yeah.
being. And like that, things come through that I never would have thought of otherwise,
Mhm.
because they're not mine, they're coming through me.
Yes.
And
Yes.
learning how to create that time for ourselves and understanding the absolute value of it is such a beautiful lesson.
Yeah. I think women particularly need permission. So if you're
Yes.
listening to this is your permission slip to follow your intuition to create that spaciousness. But I do a simple somatic practice where I put my hand on my heart and then I put my other hand actually on the skin of my womb, my belly. And I say, it all worked out. And I feel like just by simply doing that, it connects my womb to my little version of myself, the younger version of myself, my heart to my future self, who's saying that it all worked out. It connects the past, the present, and the future. And I can really feel that. And that alone gives me that permission to honor my rest, to honor my energy, and do what I need to do versus what I'm being told I should do.
Yes, 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 absolutely. And it's amazing how such a simple ritual
Hmm.
can be so impactful.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So if there is a listener who is sitting here saying, "Oh, this all sounds delicious, and I don't know how to move forward. Like I feel this deep resonance with everything that you're saying, but I'm so scheduled. I'm
Mhm.
so locked into this life that I've created where I'm working this 9 to 5, or I've set my life up in a particular way, and I just need to make this amount of money so that I will have the time and space
Mhm.
to be able to create time and space." What advice would you give to a listener who might be struggling with that space right now?
I would go back to that nature practice. So
Mm.
going back, spending the 5 to 10 minutes in nature, bring your journal with you as you drop into that more theta state, that aligned flow, and journaling around it. And one of the questions I would say is what needs to shift internally and externally so that, and then whatever that desired outcome, so that I have the courage to leave my 9 to 5, so that I have more space in my day to listen to my intuition, so that I can live more in my creative flow, so that I know with exact clarity what my business is supposed to look like, for that next offer is supposed to look like, or whatever that desired income is or desired outcome is, I would insert that there. So what needs to shift internally and externally so that, and then insert that. And then again, being receptive to the answer will come. And I would almost put money on it that it will come within a day or two. When you ask, the answer always comes.
Yes. 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 I love it. Well, it has been so fun to have this juicy and delicious conversation with you today. I think that there were so many nuggets of goodness built into this conversation. And if there's a listener who's saying, I need the medicine of Jennifer in my reality, how do they find you?
Thank you. Yes, I've enjoyed this conversation too. I just love how you are embodied in this. So it's so fun to talk to somebody who's embodied in this. You can find me on Instagram. I am Jen Whitaker, JenWhitaker. You can also check me out on my Rooted Women Rise podcast. And then I'll share my free resource as well, which is my 7 Divine Feminine Rituals for Business and Financial Abundance, which speaks a bit more in detail to some of these practices that I shared here on our podcast. And that can give you a taste a bit more of my work as well. So come over to the community and I'd love to meet you.
Perfect. Perfect. And we will link your information, your Instagram, your podcast, your website, into this video and into this podcast so that people will hopefully be able to just click and find you.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share and all of the wisdom that you passed along to us today. I think that there was so much value in this conversation and so many easy places to start when it can feel overwhelming to step into feminine abundance, right? The pathway to abundance through feminine energy.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.